A new wave of automotive TV shows focused on the shop and the build rather than the drama. And the next generation of shows would cater to YouTube audiences. And even celebrity car guys would produce shows of their own.
All right, so we're back for part two, kind of looking at the car reality TV shows, if you will, the build shows, the builder shows, you know, not necessarily racing or Dukes of Hazzard like we did before, but we left off kind of just as like Gas Monkey basically was getting started, or Fast and Loud was the actual name of the show.
Exactly, right. But everybody refers to it as Gas Monkey.
Everyone referred to it as Gas Monkey. You know, that was the name of the shop, and the monkeys, you know, they'd say, hey, we got the monkeys in the back, you know, working on stuff, you know, got Richard has his beer assistant, you know, you had kind of the different personalities of Richard and Aaron Kaufman, and that kind of really reset a lot of the stuff where later on, yes, they got more corporate builds, they got more drama, it followed the same pattern, but it really started kind of more with just focusing on the shop, focusing on having fun and building some cool cars.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that for the most part, Richard Rollins in the car world isn't really super popular with people because they think he's like a salesman.
Well, and that's what he was. That's what he kind of always was.
But business-wise, I mean, he's one of the smarter ones out of the whole group because he actually understands how to make money.
Yeah.
And if you look in the car world, the way that he flipped cars, that's making money.
And that became very popular too, you know, maybe a little bit before because you had your Pawn Stars, American Pickers, American Restoration, and Pawn Stars actually kicked off a car show counting cars because that was, you know, their car guy that they went to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so the flip part of it of like, okay, we're going to take this old rust bucket, we're going to, you know, work on it for a little bit and then see how much we can make at the end of it became part of the template of it versus, hey, we got this $100,000 crazy build that we're going to present to this corporate client.
Right.
It was more low end, not low end, but, you know, a little more budget friendly, I guess.
It was your flipper. I mean, it was, and if think about it too, HGTV at the same time was doing shows like Flip This House, you know, that kind of
flop,
Flip or Flop or whatever those things were. So it was pretty popular in the production world to like, oh, hey, we're going to do a flip show.
Yeah.
Right?
Basically, then you can count it up at the end, see how much you made.
Yeah.
And also too, you know, I think what helped maybe get away from some of the drama and stuff like that was that Discovery broke off kind of its own car network of Velocity, which later, you know, is currently now Motor Trend and all that.
And that was another brainchild of Bob Scanlon, who was, of course, the brainchild behind
Speed Vision, Speed Channel.
Yeah. So
because that went racing, that went like when Fox bought it, they turned it into NASCAR.
Exactly.
Yeah. All that kind of stuff.
And I think that's where they saw the void. They saw the void of like, okay, Speed Vision was very popular. Now NASCAR, of course, got hugely, you know, at that time, so they had to go that direction. But then there were the lost, like, what about these car shows that were doing so well? So creating the Velocity Network was a no-brainer at the time.
Well, and also too, I mean, you didn't have to, okay, you're on Discovery Channel or the Learning Channel.
Right.
Your American Chopper is probably coming up right after, you know, eight and me plus Kate or whatever.
Right.
You know,
I remember Naked and Afraid.
Afraid on Discovery Channel, and then Fast and Loud was right after that.
Right after it, right.
Yeah. So at least with like something like Velocity, you could have I mean, it was car shows 24/7.
Yeah.
So
which is, I mean, it's now we know it as Motor Trend.
Yeah. And then so basically it's like, okay, now you have to cater to a car person.
Yeah.
You don't have to cater to the mom, you know, watching it for that's watching Kate Plus 8, you know, beforehand and then watching, you know, Gas Monkey. They're there for cars.
Yeah.
So you could tailor and be a little more realistic and maybe showcase some shops and some people that aren't your traditional TV host personality and polish this and that. But for us car people, we can see that, and chances are they're our friends and we want to watch that kind of content.
Well, the other thing too is Velocity was the grown-up version of Speed Vision, because Speed Vision 2 back in the day, they were scrambling to try to fill 24/7 motorsports.
Yeah, so they were just getting any and everything almost.
Yeah, sometimes you would get like the Mississippi Swamp Buggy races or, you know, like some weird, you know, strange kart racing from I don't know where in the world. But Velocity, they looked at it as, no, we're going to create shows that have to deal with or are geared into people that like restorations or like custom cars. So, you know, there was a few shows that they came off on those on that network that did very well with a lot of people.
Yeah. No, and that's, you know, Gas Monkey kind of, if we look at that of focusing on the shop, that became a little bit of a pattern.
Right.
You had a couple years after that, Bitch and Rides, which was Kindig, super high end, low drama, builds, and more or less just focusing on the talent, focusing on the creativity and what the end result of it was.
Right.
And that was very similar for a lot of the shows that then kind of came after that, where you had Iron Resurrection with the Martin Brothers.
Yeah.
Eventually Texas Metal, following Extensive.
Right.
A lot of that kind of production company kind of went after. It seemed more or less like you're just post up in a shop for a year, follow what they do.
Yeah.
And you'll get a season of episodes out of it.
Right.
And,
well, they learned. Because
Yeah.
I think that same format was with American Hot Rod, where, they would camp out in Boyd's shop for a year and do their thing. But they even, too, they would meddle with people. They would tell people like, hey, Blue Bear over there said that you're ugly. And, then all of a sudden Mark would walk by and say, hey, someone said Blue Bear said I was ugly or something like that. I mean, it definitely got into like
the drama
a weird,
stuff was becoming what was the focus of it.
But I think they, and that was another Pilgrim production.
Yeah.
But I think what happened is they kind of evolved. They realized that, again, the car's going to give you the problems. It's going to give you the drama. It's how you wrangle it and how you take care of it.
And there were some, like spin-offs from Gas Monkey, like Misfit Garage, and then Fat and Furious and stuff like that. And those were poking fun at the characters a little bit versus the car kind of being the theme. So, like I said, it was a reset happened with Gas Monkey, and then it was kind of finding its way to kind of go forward a little bit. And there was also too, at that time, YouTube was obviously starting to pop up.
Right.
So you had people that could just do their own car content online without having the TV company.
That's something
behind them. So
I mean, Jason, that's something that Mike Finnegan and I took a shot at before.
And that's another thing. I mean, it was around the same time, but like Roadkill, kind of also helped. With between Diesel Brothers and between mostly a lot of the YouTube stuff, which both of those started on YouTube.
Right.
They were kind of, I guess you could say, more of the adventure and part of it versus, hey, we're not going to do this to flip it. We're just going to do something weird or we're going to do something really crappy and see what happens.
Right. Yeah.
So it was kind of the adventure side of it, which I think a lot of that too kind of came from Top Gear.
I agree. And Top Gear at the time was
huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
So
and they were doing multiple United US versions of Top Gear at the time, Top Gear USA, Top Gear America.
Rutledge and
Rutledge,
Tanner Faust,
Adam, and then Fieri, and then later on, Dax Shepard and stuff. But yeah, Top Gear actually started in the 70s in the UK, but it was similar to Auto Week that we talked about, to your Motor Trend. It was just a news show, which has still had that element of it, but the characters, Jeremy Clarkson and Richard Hammond and all that stuff, they kind of made the show fun. But yeah, they would take, hey, let's do an adventure. Let's take these 3 cars and see if we can race a train, or we can, go cross country, in a little caravan thing that's, half falling apart. And so that kind of also helped a lot of the YouTube guys, kind of push that, and that blew up with Roadkill and blew up with Diesel Brothers for sure.
Well, and the other thing too is the times were changing as well, where streaming was poking its head out a little bit, because you mentioned Top Gear, and Amazon Prime was just kind of poking its head out. And to kick that off, it was kind of a perfect storm for Top Gear to end at that time.
Well, that's because they ended in like 2016. When it was BBC British and stuff, and and Amazon was like,
I'll take that,
and they basically got rid of the car news show part of it and just did the adventure stuff.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So the Grand Tour was, I think that was groundbreaking at the time, because the other thing too is Amazon threw a ton of money at it.
Yeah. That was one of their first original productions. Things
which was funny. You would sit there and think that, okay, Amazon, they're a movie production house. You would
now they own MGM. So
exactly. Yeah, so you would kind of think that they would have started with movies, but no, They went after car stuff. They
Yeah.
went after the
But no,
low-hanging fruit. That was popular at
It
the
was
time.
hugely popular. They knew they had a built-in audience with those guys, especially.
Right.
And it just blew up. But, you know, kind of back to the Roadkill, I know there's a few episodes, but I think the one that really broke the internet and, like, skyrocketed that was the Lambo versus the Rat Rod.
Absolutely.
You know, which is... You're not going to see that on American Chopper or Hot Rod or maybe even Monster Garage, but that was definitely your adventure-based kind of YouTuber style thing of just kind of doing something crazy.
And that was the idea. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
and I know you kind of were technically involved a little bit in the early stages of Roadkill as well.
Yeah, I mean,
you and Finnegan.
Yeah, Finnegan and I saw the YouTube thing. We were excited about it.
Yeah.
We decided to start a destination repair show called Muscle Car Road Trip.
Yeah. If you look that up on YouTube, you can basically see the pilot for Roadkill.
And that's what it was. I mean, we didn't think it that way, though. We
no,
were
because
just
you
thinking,
weren't thinking ahead. We were all magazine guys at the time. I think he had just probably gotten laid off from Sport Truck. And so, he was trying to figure out something to do.
Right.
And
I had my shop. I had just sold my shop. So the two of us decided, hey,
so you didn't have a shop.
I didn't have a shop anymore.
No one had shops.
Right. And that was the thing.
So let's go somewhere.
We had cameras. We had buddies. We decided. And the greatest thing, too, was his wife, Jess, her El Camino. It was her dad's. Her dad had recently passed away, and she inherited this El Camino. And we're like, what a cool project.
Yeah.
So that was the first idea. Let's get on the road, go up to see our buddy in Fresno, work on this car, and have a great time. Freiberger saw it. Freiberger thought it was a great idea. Finnegan is great on camera, and Roadkill happened.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and that's Finnegan then got hired onto Hot Rod because he needed a job.
Yeah,
and,
he needed a job too.
Essentially, Roadkill kind of started that, but that combined with the flip thing, like really kind of created, I guess you could say, the next generation of your car TV shows,
right?
You know, that we can kind of see.
Which was also too, I think those shows, the YouTube stuff, it was unscripted. It was what can I get away with?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it was much lower budget
where
you didn't have, you know, and you didn't need your full studio. And then, granted, later Hot Rod Garage, you know, with Lucky Costa, like they've evolved stuff into full studio kind of things and doing things at a higher level. But with that kind of stuff, you needed maybe one or two camera guys, some GoPros. Yeah. You know, a couple little mics and stuff. I mean, we were doing the same stuff, you know, when we started Auto Revolution and that it wasn't unscripted. It was unscripted where it was more or less, okay, here's the concept. Yeah. Here's what we're going to do. And let's see what happens. Right. And that's what it is.
I always looked at it as public access TV with worldwide distribution.
Yeah.
Because nobody really had there was a few shows that were polished. You could tell that maybe a production company was trying to do a pilot. So let's throw it on YouTube and see where it goes. But also too, it was back to skateboard videos. Just friends walking around with cameras.
Yeah. And YouTube did, and you know, with social media and stuff, it did cater more towards, or people were drawn more towards vlog style personalities, you know, following somebody. And so that kind of style of it happened, you know, even beyond that, you know, you had guys like Rich Rebuilds who, you know, started rebuilding Teslas and stuff, you know, around that same time. And, you know, a lot of fix-it kind of shows that popped up on YouTube that became very popular. I mean, it's probably even more popular than a TV show on Velocity or something at the time, you know?
And some things kind of carried over from there. You look at the guy Chris Fix, that you never know what he looks like. Well, he took the cue from Top Gear with the Stig, and when he walks around, you know, trade shows, he walks around with a helmet on, so you don't know what the guy looks like. You know, at first I thought that was a total gimmick, and I thought that was kind of lame. And then, I really thought about it. When you're on YouTube that much, I don't think that guy would be able to go outside. Like every other supermarket would be like, "You're Chris Fix," you know. Like, so I get why he's doing that. Yeah,
that happens with a lot of these things, you know. And the same thing too. You know, you started seeing the Gymkhana videos that Ken Block was doing.
Oh my God,
Hoonigans,
totally right. Yes,
Hoonigans started kind of with that same thing of just going crazy, you know, burnouts and car tricks, or if you will, on YouTube, you know, kind of like the skateboard videos stuff back in the day.
And also too, that would have never, if you would have pitched that idea to HBO, for example, I'm going to go shut down a city and I'm going to go do donuts around the city, they'd look at you and just start laughing at you. Yeah. Right? They'd be like, there's no way. Production wise, you guys are crazy. Yeah. Hence.
No, but, and that's the thing too, is like Ken Block. Yep. And we've talked to Matt Martelli,
right.
You know, Mad Media. They've helped film the first few Gymkhanas, and they all came from the
But I was just gonna
skateboarding
say that.
industry.
Yeah, they
all
just-
came from that. Just
Yep.
do it.
Just
hey, we
guerrilla
got
style.
an idea.
Yep.
Literally guerrilla style. I mean, there was even
Yeah.
a guy in a gorilla suit.
Yeah, that's right on.
You know, so
But you're right. That I think is where the popularity that brought car people to YouTube. You know, because you were not going to be able to see that on network TV. Also, too, worldwide, because we think
no, for sure, yeah,
we're thinking Fast and Loud. Everybody's seen that. Not
No.
at the time.
Yeah,
you know, they didn't
that
have
doesn't
worldwide
exist
distribution.
every single place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it definitely was a game changer in the automotive space, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're still rocking your stock stereo system, you need some help. And you need to go to Powerbase and check out their OEM direct fit line of speakers. Basically a plug and play operation on any newer Chevy, Ford, Dodge, Nissan, you name it. And I actually got a full set in my Toyota 4Runner. It sounds amazing, especially considering you're basically just replacing the factory speakers. So go check them out at powerbaseusa.com. Use the code AUTOREV24 and you can get 10% off anything on the site, including these cool little Bluetooth speakers. This one right here is the Sound Cube. Clip it on your backpack, take it down to the beach. And what's really cool is this split speaker. So you can put one in the kitchen, one in the backyard at a party. Everyone's having a good time listening to the same music. Basically got like full stereo, almost surround sound system in this little package. So if you use the code AUTOREV24, you can get 10% off. So go check them out and take a listen. So you've been following along on Auto Revolution, you know that we're a big fan of Chevy OBS trucks. And Beltec Suspension has been around for 40 years, and they were one of the first innovators of the sport truck movement back in the 80s. And we've been lucky with them to partner on a few different projects, from the OBS Clash documentary series to the Tahoe Unlimited, and even a few things we've got up our sleeves coming out later this year. What's really cool is they've partnered with us to offer free shipping if you use the code AUTOREVOLUTION24 at beltec.com. So whether it's a lowering kit on your Chevy or a lift kit on your Bronco or your Jeep, and if you use the code AUTOREVOLUTION24 at beltec.com, you're going to get free shipping. Now back to the show. No, and that's, I mean, you started to basically make stars on YouTube, you know, so then when kind of you needed that refresh again on Discovery Channel, on, you know, eventually what became Motor Trend, they started then picking people from YouTube.
Right. Well, if you look, why did they buy,
I mean, they,
you know, Peterson Publishing and all that?
No, and that's, Discovery Channel, you know, Warner Brothers, Time Warner.
Whoever owns it.
That large
that was
conglomerate. Yeah. The funny thing is when I looked it up, Motor Trend is under the TNT division of entertainment for Warner.
For Warner? Really?
Yeah. So, like I said, it just,
that's
all, which was then, TNT is part of, then was originally TNN,
right?
The Nashville network.
Right.
It all comes full circle.
I know.
But the, more or less the reason Discovery bought Hot Rod Magazine, Truck and Lowrider, all
titles,
10, Prime Media, Peterson.
Yeah.
They bought that basically to get Roadkill.
Yeah, I know.
To get that audience, because they needed velocity. You know, there were several shows on YouTube that Motor Trend was putting out that had millions of views, and they wanted to be able to air those on Discovery Channel.
Well, yeah, obviously they needed it because
they needed the content, and that's essentially how all that happened.
Right.
But even prior to that, you know, guys like the Diesel Brothers, you know, Sparks Motorsports, they were big on YouTube for doing crazy, wild, huge lifted diesel trucks.
Right.
Okay, and their weird personalities with beards.
Yeah,
you know, thanks, Aaron. You basically
set
the stage of who was going to be the next, you know, TV stars.
Right.
And so they created that show.
Yeah. And they did a bunch of crazy raffles.
And they,
because
that's
an audience.
Well, and that's what they were doing ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know, before the TV deal and stuff, where they would buy our merch, you know, give away this crazy truck and this crazy build. And then, of course, it, you know, that helped get them a big audience. And then the, you know, TV network deal and the Discovery stuff. What is kind of interesting with that, and even prior to that with Jesse James, with, you know, Boyd at American Hot Rod, like, you're now taking a shop or a group of people that may do things a certain way, and now you're amplifying them to 100 million people.
I know.
So there's going to be some legal issues.
Yes.
There's going to be some background stuff that's kind of going strange. And we'll backtrack a little bit, but I know with Diesel Brothers, like the EPA, and I think the state of Utah hit them really hard, finding them, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, for basically pollution
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. And at that time, especially, I remember EPA was going after every
that was the big
diesel
crackdown.
company.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
tuners,
Yeah.
you know,
remember like
DPF, you know, deletes, you know, for all that kind of stuff. I remember even like at SEMA, they walked around and like shut someone's booth down, basically.
I know.
You know, got a court order to cease and desist. And, but yeah, they had seen that, you know, in the diesel world, like the blowing a ton of black smoke out the pipe was like that was basically the equivalent of your hot rod burnout.
Exactly.
You know, that was showing, you got so much power in this and that. Well, if you're doing that on a street driven registered vehicle,
people frown about that.
Then and you're doing it on TV or on YouTube
or showing people how to do it
or showing TV. How to do it.
Right.
You're going to get hit.
Yeah. And you know what? A lot of the shows got hit with different stuff. You know, I mean,
Jesse back in the day, I mean, this was after Monster Garage wasn't part of any of that, but obviously having that attention, then his you know, one-off choppers with a hand-built frame and, you know, custom-built motor that weren't having any, you know, emissions control on it and stuff like that. You know, the car, you know, California board went after him and, you know, fined him a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm. They want their cut.
Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, you know, and I think he even said he would offer to make them all, you know, basically take everyone's bike back in, retrofit them, make them all smog legal, emissions controlled, and all that kind of stuff. And I think then that's why I moved. Well, one of the reasons of just, I'm sure I'm going to Texas.
I'm over
this
it.
State.
Right. I'm over it. Yeah. Boyd got into trouble too.
Boyd did too.
Boyd, you know, and the thing about Boyd, I feel bad for him on that deal because, you know, some guy comes in and says, hey, I want a 32 Roadster and, you know, this is my body and it's completely rotted out, but I want you to build this car.
Yeah. Or they were doing fiberglass bodies.
Right. And then he finds a car that's in good shape, but doesn't have paperwork for that. So take the old car that's going to be thrown away, put it in the new car. I mean, what's the really big deal? However, that is illegal.
Yeah. Well, and even too, if you're doing a fiberglass car, or Marcel Delay is doing a hand-built body, coach-built body.
Yeah.
Now, you know, whatever his name, Roy or whoever in the back was building a chassis from scratch.
Yeah.
Basically frame rails.
Right.
And building it from scratch.
Right.
New motor. It's essentially, technically, legally a brand new car.
Right.
So then,
where's your crash test? Where's
if they're
your
tagging
airbag?
Well, and that's if they're you know, and granted, these are hot rods, show cars and stuff, hardly being, you know, driven to that extent, but you're then trying to tag it and register it as a 32, you know, Deuce or something like that. Well, California's like, well, no, we have a special construction vehicle program for that specifically, but then it's gonna need 2007 emissions.
Right, exactly.
Smog control.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that testing, stuff like that. And a lot of guys get away with this, but he was basically on national TV.
Yes.
Saying that he was doing this. Right. And you know,
and
the DMV, you know, California came in and went, hey, dude, no.
Right.
You know, basically, we want our money.
Right. Pretty much, you know, hey, you're making money. We want my cut. So, yeah. So, and that's the bummer thing, you know, that, I mean, look, shops do what they can to make profit. And also, too, there's a process sometimes that you can't get around.
Yeah.
But
when you have it just basically blown up on TV and where everybody can take notice and see it, then some issues happen. And they weren't the only ones, you know, Pimp My Ride, I think especially got hit for this, which came out later, which I don't think is a huge deal that it was like, oh, some of these cars weren't those actual people's cars. Yeah. The houses that they were at, they weren't filming at, which completely makes sense because then someone's going to say, hey, I know that house. And I know that they have a car with huge stereo system and $5,000 rims on it. I'm going to go jack them. Right. You know, so
you'd be surprised how many people from overhauling.
And that's, I was going to say, overhauling had a lot of those same issues in the early years where they didn't fix the motor or they had issues. I mean, essentially a lot of that for the reveal was maybe it just had to start up and roll about 10 feet.
Right.
You know, that was all they cared about for camera.
Right, for camera. Yeah. But overhauling, you know, again, knowing a lot of the guys behind the scenes, they were very thorough. They actually even had the cars go to safety inspections where, Usually the guy after the
and
reveal.
Pimp My Ride necessarily didn't do that.
Out the door, yeah. You know,
Then they probably never even popped the hood on some of those cars on Pimp My Ride. They just worried about the aquarium in the back and the chandelier or something like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If the thing still rolls and goes down the street and they get their shot, they don't care. Right.
Yeah, but on overhauling there were a few issues.
Yeah.
Things that will pop up, and also too, what's kind of tough with that is a lot of those guys you were maybe doing restoring, making over their car because they were in a financial struggle or they had a family, they couldn't afford to do it themselves, which is why it maybe sat. Okay, so now, even though they fixed it all up, did all this stuff, okay, now 2 years later, okay, you've got this set of Willwood brakes or something on it.
Now you got to change the pads.
Now you got to go change the pads, and they are a Willwood only part number,
right,
or something like that costs 10x what it would have cost.
Exactly.
So it's a good thing and a bad thing because it's like now you've got this cool new car, but now you've got a cool new car you've got to handle. You got to maintain it,
maintain it, right? Yeah. The thing that it's kind of funny. I saw this happen on the show a couple times where the guy would come on in the reveal, and of course he'd be super happy, and everybody would be crying and everything. But then the guy would turn and look and go, "I didn't want it that color. That's not how I saw my car 50 years ago."
And that's the problem is a lot of those guys are the guys that have had that car sitting in their garage for 10 years, dreaming of what they would eventually,
50.
Yeah.
Right.
Dreaming of what they would do for it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got a Chip Foose designed overhauling car, but probably wasn't what you wanted.
I don't like green.
And maybe that car has some sentimental value to you.
That's exactly what happened.
And it's a tough thing. I mean, because it's like, hey, dude, you just got a bunch of stuff done in your car. Like, be happy. But then it's just a weird thing sometimes. And I think later on, maybe they realized that because they kind of stopped. Hey, we're going to go steal the car. And the guy doesn't know what happens until a week later.
I will tell you 100% that is exactly why they started doing that. It was because the people were complaining about how Chip, and again, too, like because the guy had a vision of his car being yellow and Chip painted it blue, the guy freaked out. So they started saying, you know what? No more of this. We're going to bring the people in. We're going to kind of let them know. Yeah. But it's still going to be, it's going to be like, you can pick from this multiple choice.
Or at least you're working with the person. At least they're not completely taken aback. Or you can at least figure out like, okay, the dude hates green, and never wants to see anything green in his life. So don't paint it green.
Don't paint it that color, right?
Yeah.
But overhauling. I mean, for a while there was the joke going around the show like no good deed goes unpunished. That was kind of a deal. But you know what? In the end of it, you're still getting your car made over.
No, I mean it was still a really cool thing and a cool experience, but and you're gonna have some good experiences. There's gonna be some bad experiences, but
you can't please them all.
That show and a lot of these other shows really did help the industry. Maybe overhauling hurt the industry a little bit because then you had guys coming in going,
why can't my car done in 5 days?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What do you mean a paint job's going to take 2 months or 5 months?
Right. I watched it on TV last night.
They did it overnight on overhaul.
Yeah.
Not realizing that they had a $500,000 budget. Right. They had 30 people on staff, every tool and every part imaginable on a phone call. They could get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that also took, especially for overhauling, especially for some of the shows, that added a whole nother element to a shop.
Right.
We talk about later of like Texas Metal with, Extensive.
Yeah.
They got their own TV show kind of coming off, the Iron Resurrection and Gas Monkey, Fast and Loud kind of Texas craze.
Right.
And it now then you're now taking a shop that's been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
And has a certain dynamic. They do cool stuff, do cool builds, do great work. But now you're throwing a TV production schedule into their midst. It's not necessary in order to basically, I mean, we've done it. We did it with Roadside, at Delmo, Speed and Custom, at Trey 5 Customs, LNG. Like, it took 6 months sometimes to get one episode.
Right.
Because that's how long it took to build that car.
Yeah. You just didn't have the material.
Or the budget wasn't there.
Yeah, right.
To do it all in one thing, you're, moving stuff around. It was a customer build. So sometimes the customer coming in, you know, isn't just dropping off $100,000 straight off the bat to then have the shop be able to make it happen in time. So then the production companies are going to have to create their own builds, or they're like what happened with American Chopper and stuff like that, of where a corporate company comes in and has just a ton of money to dump on it. And there's a reason to make it and get it turned around quick. But, you know, some of our friends like Alex Anderson, you know, he started out doing stuff, you know, with Jesse and then was on Monster Garage.
Right.
It kind of like him, some of the other guys, they would kind of had your shop manager.
Yeah.
You know, Mark Oya on Overhauling, you know, essentially to then be the gap to bridge between the production company and the guys at the shop. Well, a little bit.
So those guys are referred to as showrunners?
Yeah, so showrunner.
And your showrunner is your professional that knows usually about what the show is, but also knows about production.
Yeah, so they know both. They know both sides of it. So they know they know what's realistic. They know what a shop needs.
Right.
But then they also have the ear and the poke of the producer to be like, hey, this needs to be done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
This needs to be done in 2 months.
Or even when they say, I need that done in 2 hours, and the guy can go, doesn't happen. So there needs to be someone there that is kind of the cooler, that kind of
the middleman.
Yeah.
And Alex did that for a lot of shows, from Monster Garage to West Coast Customs to Diesel Brothers, you know,
Wheeler Dealer,
when that kind of came from the UK, and got brought over to, you know, the US, and that was kind of interesting with that too. Is that show had been going on since the early 2000s in the UK, but that was kind of one of your first like flip car shows, where it was just, hey, this customer's looking for this car, I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna find it as cheap as I can. Got the mechanic, you know, in the back that's going to just do the tune-up, fix a couple things here and there, spend a couple days on it, and then boom,
we'll see what we can
see how much we can get for it. When it did come to the U.S., they adapted it a little bit towards our car culture a little bit more, of doing more custom work to it.
Right, more appearance stuff, and it wasn't just like, let's repair the brakes and send it on its
way.
was,
we're going to put this different engine in it, or we're going to do a different suspension, or give it a paint job, or stuff like that. Appeal to your custom, you know, person a little bit more, but that kind of created some issues of some of the production and some of the stars where they weren't used to doing that. You know, so that's, you know, they got a different, one of the hosts left, and a different one, you know, Anna Anstead came on when it came to the US, because it was a different dynamic. It was a different show.
There's also kind of the thing that's kind of neat too about the shows that were on a network that some people kind of like fell off of, like Overhauling, for example. You have Jessie Combs, who's one of the, you know, she was a regular that became obviously more of a face of her own, and obviously going on to doing all of our land speed challenges. You know, but Jessie too was great on Overhauling, because it showed everybody that you don't have to be a guy to do this. Anybody can do this.
No, exactly. I mean, you have the whole team there that's working, and, you know, handful of them are women, handful of men, you know, it was all just everybody doing it. Everyone was equal.
Jessie held her own. I mean, she did her deal. Lucky Costa, another guy, or I'm sorry, Raymond Costa.
I was going to say, who's Raymond Costa?
It's always laugh at that.
He got his start on Overhauling for TV stuff, basically. And
then, you know, obviously being the host of Hot Rod Garage. You know, Lucky's another breed. I mean, Lucky, obviously, I go way back with Lucky. I basically grew up around him. And even my mom was the kind of person that said, don't hang around that shifty character like your friend Lucky. Right. But, you know,
but
Lucky,
it worked out for everybody.
No, exactly. And Lucky has always been like, what you see on Hot Rod Garage is Lucky just sitting down next to us. I mean, he's just the most humblest guy in the world, but is full of the one-liners. I mean, he is just always
great on camera, but really knows his stuff, especially when it comes to wiring. You know, I mean, that was kind of his specialty. And that was the thing, like Hot Rod Garage, you know, that was around. Obviously, there was Hot Rod TV. Roadkill was huge at that time.
Doing great,
They were spinning off kind of from Roadkill on some other things, and Hot Rod Garage was kind of, I think, honestly, a lot of that was, you know, the industry looking at Roadkill, and going, yes, it's entertaining, but when you're taking a Datsun from the junkyard and you're zip tying an old fuel pump to it, or you're doing stuff,
fun.
and not you're not installing anybody's parts.
Right.
You're not making something reliable and driving and cool. You're making something junky on purpose.
Right.
You know, you kind of needed then Hot Rod Garage and, you know, Lucky and Tony Angelo and then now Alex Taylor.
Right.
You needed kind of they're going to do some cool stuff and have some fun, but they're also going to show how and what it takes to put an LS into a truck.
Right,
or
exactly. Yeah.
put a huge big block into a drag car, you know, do some things that are actually real world and, you know, catering to the industry as well.
I agree. Even to the point where I know in Hot Rod Garage, they built that in the early days, they built that like 65 Ford truck that they put like a whole Crown Vic undercarriage underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
and that's something that's very commonly done.
It was, but for the people in the know, they know that's an easy swap. I think Hot Rod Garage was the first like real like, hey guys, look at world. You can go buy a cop car and put all the stuff in this truck.
Yeah,
I think that was kind of like where people learned about that. You know?
Well, and even too, just on same point, Gas Monkey was doing that.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, C10s were a huge thing.
Yeah.
You know, still are, but at the time that was when C10s were exploding.
Right.
And, you know, Aaron Kaufman or Casey, you know, who's the original paint guy on that show, were into kind of Ford trucks.
Yeah.
They were into some old Ford stuff. And so they were kind of trying to champion some of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember, they showed doing a Crown Vic swap,
Yeah.
you know, under the front end of one of those old, you know,
Right.
I think it was like a 70s, you know,
Something like that, yeah.
Ford truck or something like that.
But that's what I liked about those shows is that
Yeah.
they kind of showed more like, hey, we're doing this here in the shop. You can do it too.
yeah,
It wasn't the kind of like,
It was
I'm going to put a
ideas
weed
and-
whacker motor on this thing to make it, you know, have a propeller to fly. Like that was so overdone.
Well, and that, like I said, there always needs to be a reset.
Yeah.
There always needs to be a cycle of a new thing to happen, you know, and the early years of YouTube, and you said, like, you know, with Roadkill, with Diesel Brothers, with Hot Rod Garage, those kind of then graduated onto Velocity Discovery and Motor Trend Channel.
Right.
You still had then a lot of the YouTube guys that were doing similar things on a different budget and a different level, but getting just as big. You know, we mentioned Hoonigans.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were doing similar things and doing some crazy stuff.
Right.
And focused very much on
1320
YouTube.
video, I think was
1320 video,
Yep.
the drag racing thing that kind of then evolved, and especially like with Cletus McFarlane,
Right.
kind of evolved from just street racing, drag racing coverage to
that was some popularity
YouTube.
from Street Outlaws as well. I think that
Yeah.
little peppered in from having a network show, that 1320 video, which was obviously involved with the show. You know, I think that helped their YouTube channel grow exponentially.
Yeah.
You know, just because of popularity of people watching street racing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and which was funny, and you know, we've been to some of the tapings and stuff,
Yeah.
recordings for Street Outlaws, and you know some of those guys.
Yeah.
And it is street racing.
I was going to say, yes.
It still is street racing because you're not racing on a track.
Right.
I
They're
mean,
on the
obviously they
street.
had the no prep kings, you know, where
Yeah.
it was on a track, but then no prep work.
Right.
So it was a little more sketchy, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would race on city streets or
Yeah.
county streets, roads,
Yeah.
you know, actual asphalt. But it wasn't like what
It
we
wasn't
think
guerrilla,
of street racing.
yeah.
No, it wasn't like your illegal street
Yeah.
racing where
Yeah.
you
The
set
fire
up.
department's there. The police
Yeah,
are there.
there
There's
was-
an ambulance. Yeah.
Yeah, ambulance was there.
Yeah.
CHP or sheriffs,
Yeah.
you know, were there.
Right. The road was closed.
The road was
Yeah.
completely closed.
Right.
It, you know, basically closed track, professional, do not attempt.
Right.
Kind of a deal.
Right.
But the actual road they were
Yeah.
racing on was a
Yeah.
city or county street.
That one night we went out to Palmdale.
Yeah.
And I remember watching Farm Truck going down. Now, this road too was pretty sketchy. It had a high crown.
Yeah.
So
It was a complete back country road in the
Totally.
middle of nowhere.
it had a ditch on both sides.
Yeah.
And I remember the crosswind was blowing sand across the. I was looking and going like, you guys are dumb.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Farm Truck at the big end of the track, where on slicks on that thing going, you know what, 120, 130, and that thing skating where he had to stay in the throttle to keep it straight.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, this is real at that point because that's still sketchy.
Yeah.
But also too, I think that they all realize that there's safety equipment and everything around him. So, you know,
Yeah. It's
be a superhero.
yeah, no, it's a little different, of course, than actual street racing, but like at least they didn't completely fake it.
No.
You know.
And the cars too. I mean, I remember watching Murder Nova, and I remember sitting there with my camera going like, okay, I know he's going to launch, so my camera's got to be about right here to get the photo. And I remember sitting there like having it, like I was ready, and the guy went, and I did hit the shutter right when I heard the car leave, and the car wasn't in the photo.
Yeah, he was already gone. Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, his 60 foot, it's got to be crazy.
Yeah.
You know, that's
some legit cars.
Yeah. I mean, so
Some
for everybody to
legit
say
street cars.
Yeah, for everybody to say like, oh, that's all script. No. That show was, they're racing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they definitely were. It's just in a controlled, safe environment because it's at some point that's kind of what you have to do.
And nobody wants to see anybody get hurt.
No, and people still have. Unfortunately, people have died from you know in that show and some of the contestants, and it's still sketchy. It's still risky, you know, but try to just make it as safe as possible to A, for insurance reasons, and for just for safety.
You know, and I know there's guys like your Blake Wickies too that, you know, obviously drove around, you know, got almost arrested for.
Well, no, Wilkie did.
Yeah, he did.
He got charged with several things. I mean, he took his off-road little buggy and just ran around the streets, literally, of San Diego.
Yeah,
you know, just straight YouTuber viral video style, and then he's grown into doing a lot more, you know, since then, and that kind of helped spawn it, you know, and so that's kind of the balance, especially for like the YouTube audience, is like how much can you get away with before the cops
show up at your
door. I mean, even a couple months ago, a YouTuber was shooting fireworks like from a helicopter at a Lambo that was being driven and stuff, and he got arrested for it because you had no permits, you had no fire
safety
team
or anything
you know, out there in case something happened. It's like you're literally shooting projectiles from a helicopter to the ground. Like it's dangerous, and it could start a fire. I mean, there's been, you know, some YouTube car guys that have gotten arrested for doing dumb stuff out there without realizing that, like, hey, this is video evidence of what I'm doing.
Right. Filmed in Mexico.
Filmed in Mexico. But then, you know, you've had some YouTubers that have basically turned into full production companies that would rival anything on Motor Trend or anything like that, like, you know, Donut Media.
Yes.
You know, with it really kind of came a little bit of the same vein of Hoonigans, obviously donuts, you know, doing donuts.
Yeah.
And, you know, really kind of catering towards the younger crowd with import cars, Mazdas, you know, doing a lot of these builds and a lot of these things and stuff like that. And kind of just bringing a little bit of a new crowd into the automotive world too.
And you know what? At first, I thought the guy was a numbskull.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, James Pumphrey was kind of the original host, or you know, he's still obviously on there. He was a stand-up comedian.
Right.
And I think he's in his early 40s, and he's had a couple heart attacks. So
that's what I'm saying.
You know what that means when you combine that and stand-up comedians?
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. Like, at first, I didn't like the deal because I didn't like that shock, that YouTube, you know, kind of audience grab, right? And I was like, these guys aren't car people. They're just, you know, doing
your clickbait kind of stuff, maybe.
But then, like, I think around COVID, when you couldn't go out and do anything, all of a sudden now, you know, they brought news to us.
They brought some different elements of, like, their D-list, their counting, you know, these cars that, you know, what's got the most horsepower, let's do a comparison, you know, and race these two cars together and kind of see what happens. And so it kind of brought some different elements to it that, you know, maybe you hadn't really seen you're not going to see necessarily on Motor Trend or Discovery Channel, because it's not the most exciting thing, or it's a different format, but it's still entertaining.
Well, not only that, it was informative, you know, when they would actually go into, like, here's the history of GTRs. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, well, I don't know that much about GTR, so I'll watch that, you know, and how thorough they were about it, and the production value. I mean, to me, I'm like, wow, this is pretty decent. Yeah. But I think that's also, if you're going to do this now, you're going to have to get that decent. You're not going to get away with, hey, I'm here, and you're not going to get away with that anymore.
It's the bar was raised, you know, that was popular, and then the bar kind of kept being raised as far as the production value of just your YouTube guys. So you kind of had to be a little bit at that level. Or from, you know, the YouTubers, from Velocity, then turning into Motor Trend, you know, Motor Trend being part of the Discovery family, the HBO Warner family. The popularity of cars and car TV shows has grown again.
Right.
You know, you're getting a lot of the celebrities that would host another TV show.
Yeah.
Now they're car guys.
Right.
Now there's more than enough, you know, behind them to produce and to run their own car show now.
Well, I mean, look, let's look at it this way. Everybody that's a celebrity has some kind of cool car. I mean, even the people that say they don't have cool cars, like, they still have one or two of them stashed away.
And it depends on how maybe hardcore of it. And that
Right.
was the whole thing. I mean, like West Coast Customs kind of got their big bump from building cars for Shaq.
Right.
Jesse James was building bikes for Shaq,
Right.
building bikes for Kid Rock, building, you know, stuff for celebrities. So there always has been that celebrity aspect in there.
Right.
I mean, especially like Unique Whips.
Right.
Back in the day was
that was like
that was your
Yeah.
celebrity, you know, do a cool car stereo for this basketball player or football player, and hey, check it out, you know.
Right. So it makes total sense now to have current celebrities that are, you know, not only showing off what they're into, but also too, it kind of keeps them in the public eye.
Yeah.
You look
building
at
some stuff.
You look at Kevin Hart in the last, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that guy spent some money on cars.
No, and that's what's really cool is that he's not necessarily just like
He's not just
some
buying
of the other ones.
right.
He's like, just buying this or buying the latest, you know,
He's
Bentley,
right.
something like that. Yeah, he's if you really look at it, especially, you know, knowing that, you know, Sean Smith, you know, does a lot of the design work, you know, some of the shops that are doing these builds are high-end shops. He's commissioning works of art.
He totally is. 100%.
And obviously TV networks, okay, we know Kevin Hart is going to sell no matter what.
No matter what.
You know, and these cool cars. So like they had, you know, Kevin Hart's muscle car crew.
Right.
You know, doing some cars and stuff like that. Even recently, you know, Robert Downey Jr., who's always been a car person, you know, basically like, okay, I want to fund and do a car show that shows that we can still enjoy custom cars
and
be
God.
emissions
right, and still be compliant, right?
Be emissions compliant, but also be more climate friendly. Of like, okay, like do an EV swap into an old C10 truck or K5, you know, truck.
Yeah.
You know, do an biodiesel swap into an old Mercedes.
Right.
You know, stuff like that, and you know, they actually just won a daytime Emmy for that show.
Yeah. Well, think of Jay Leno, who had a famous, huge career.
Yeah.
I mean, network star.
Yeah.
And retires and goes into cars, which
well,
we know he's a huge car guy.
He's always been in cars. I mean, he's got a car collection that's worth over $1 billion.
Yes, it is.
Legitimately.
Yes, it is.
And it's kind of like one of those things. Like, yeah, okay, you've been a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
And you've been a TV show host for 30 years.
Yeah.
No, more than 30 years.
More, yeah.
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 Like, okay, you're going to retire, but like, you can't retire.
Right.
What do you like to do? Well, he just likes to go and check out all of his cars. So,
and
you know, and that started out as a YouTube channel.
I know that's
as a YouTube show.
Yeah, his approach was totally different.
Yeah.
And even you look at the guy and think that he would just go to another network.
Well, I mean, he had NBC in his back pocket,
Right.
which eventually CNBC picked up.
Yeah.
Jay Leno's Garage.
Right.
You know, to be the producers and show it, but
yeah.
It all started with Jay Leno's Garage YouTube channel.
Right.
You know, and basically he took like, you know, Walker and stuff, like the guys that were some of his producers on the Tonight Show.
Right.
And hey, let's film me talking about some cars and invite people on and go drive some cars around.
Right.
And so like, yeah, Jay Leno's Garage.
Yeah.
Brought a lot of popularity to it.
Well, and even too, you know, there's been some offshoots of that style. Like, you know, I think we like to call those feature shows.
Yeah.
And
Autotopia
LA is a total
Sean
great
Davis.
example. Yeah, right. You know, what Sean and those guys are doing over there. I mean, that's kind of what we would consider in the magazine world what a feature would have been.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're also interviewing the person.
Yeah, you get the behind the
talking
scenes
to them. Yeah. You're actually driving it or being a passenger in it, which you never really had that in the magazine world.
I was just going to say that was the one thing that was always missing was you couldn't give a true driving impression through words. Like you see Sean's face, like when the guy hits the throttle, like, I mean, in Blank's truck, I think that's the best one when he hits the throttle and Sean's just like,
just full,
or
push back in the seats. Yeah.
What's his name? Izzy, in his freaking GTR.
Yeah.
And you see, I mean, Sean's legitimately scared, and he should be because they're going down Main Street in Gardena, so they should be legitimately scared.
Yeah, in a full race GTR basically.
But if you look at the way that he's death gripping the freaking door panel.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're never going to get that out of a page in a magazine.
No.
No way.
And that's what, yeah, you're able to get that with TV. You're able to get that with, video.
Right.
And also too, like that's Autotopia, even some of the Jay Leno stuff is still a little bit of your guerrilla style where they're not on a racetrack necessarily all the time. They're on some city streets or filmed in Mexico.
Yes.
And you're getting a little bit more of the raw, real experience of it. And that's what social media, that's what YouTube, and that's what some of these kind of car reality shows started out as.
Right.
And kind of have gone back to be more legit, to be more real world and to the car guys themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think now, it's kind of like, you've got, Speed Vision trying to make a comeback.
Yeah.
You've got your Motor Trend channel. You've got some car shows here and there on other networks.
Right.
But a lot of the stuff is online streaming on YouTube.
I think that's...
and we are too. So you can go check us out. Go check out all the other stuff that we have on this channel.
That's true, because there's a few things that we've done as well that I think that you guys...
OBS Clash,
yeah.
C10 Clash, some of the roadside shows, Behind the Wheel. So go check out some of our automotive TV content on this channel, on Amazon, on Tubi. And I guess we'll see where we go from here and see what the next kind of iteration of automotive media content is going to be and what that's going to look like.
We'll see what the future holds.
Yep.